Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, How to Improve the Efficiency of Your Special Pricing Agreements, Ship and Debit, and Other Programs, sponsored by Computer Market Research and presented by Frank Hurtte, founding partner of River Heights Consulting. My name is Alex Weinbaum, and I am the content manager here at Computer Market Research. For over 33 years, we have been helping channel-driven businesses automate their sales and marketing programs, as well as standardize and manage their channel data. Today I'm excited to introduce Frank Hurtte, who has spent the last 28 years in the trenches of distribution. During that time, he was honored by his peers to be named president of the Association for High Technology Distribution. Since founding River Heights Consulting in 2005, Frank has worked with distributors and their partners on 4 continents. He's worked with the Power Transmission Distributors Association, the Fluid Power Distributors Association, the National Association of Electrical Distributors, the Control Systems Integrators Association, as well as his old friends at AHTD. Frank has written 3 books around the topics in distribution and has authored over 300 articles on the topic. His blog, The Distributor Channel, has over 100,000 readers and features nearly 200 articles focused on distribution issues. Later in today's presentation, Frank will be joined by Sam Barrows, who heads our Automated Solutions sales team. He will briefly introduce special pricing, our ship and debit solutions, and wrap up today's presentation. I do want to quickly mention that we will spend the last 5 to 10 minutes answering some of your questions. So if you have something you would like to ask Frank or Sam, feel free to enter it in the chat box at any time. So here's a little snapshot of what we'll be covering today. Basically 5 sections. We'll discuss manufacturers' growing dependence on the channel, the explosion of special pricing agreements and ship and debit practices, why your channel incentive programs fail to produce a sufficient ROI, how to improve channel incentive program ROI, and why automation is essential to channel incentive program success. And we will close with a Q&A. And now, without further ado, here is Frank Hurtte. Frank?
Hey, thank you, Alex, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It's great to have you online with us. And just to kind of launch off, I don't know how many of you have been in this industry for as long as I have, but I remember attending a meeting back in 1995 where an expert stood up in front of a group of distributors. Must have been a pretty brave guy, and used the term disintermediation, which basically meant that, hey, in the future, all of you distributors are going to go away. And I'm happy to report that based on what we've seen, distributors are more important today than they ever have been. And there's a number of reasons for that. And some of them are market driven. For instance, there's more and more need for customized solutions where distributors take multiple products and from multiple manufacturers and put them together into something else. The costs of operating a field sales force by a manufacturer have continued to grow, especially in the past couple of years with airfares and hotels zooming and cost. It's made it more difficult to cover the needs of customers. But I think one of the most important things that are driving the need for distributors come not from market things, but from demographics. We're living in a day right now when baby boomers are marching out the door at a rate of about 10,000 people per day. And when they go, generally speaking, they're often taking some of the most qualified people from our customers. And they're taking knowledge that has been built around the customer and has been developed at the customer, and knowledge of how to apply your products, and they're taking it with them to the beach. And distributors more and more find themselves filling that space in what I call the knowledge gap with customers. And so with that in mind, distributors are going to be here. They're continuing to morph, and they're continuing to be important. And part of this comes into play with what we're going to talk about with special pricing agreements. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Here's really what special pricing agreements are all about. They're about how can we fill a commercial need or a market-driven need for a specific customer without taking an across-the-board price cut. And the people that are demanding or that are calling for special pricing agreements are super large Fortune 500 companies where they've got multiple facilities, multiple locations. Same thing happening in construction industries and other industries where the large customers are trying to leverage the volume that they purchase to get a better price. We're also seeing things with national account programs and even with the government with things like GSA contracts, where it's no longer effective for a manufacturer to sell their products directly to the government. Why not involve the channel? And so special pricing has been in place. And finally, one of the things that I think is super important is that technology on our products is changing, and there's always someone who has got the next technology jump on us, and oftentimes that technology jump comes along with a lower price. And so people are using special pricing to hold the product's position against the new technology until they are able to develop a product which can answer that need and perhaps be lower in price. Here's a couple of trends that I've seen in this area that I think are worth mentioning. First of all, special pricing agreements have been around for 20 years, but in the old days, the special pricing agreement was kind of a catalog-based deal. Here's our catalog, and since you're an important customer, we're going to give you an additional 5% or an additional 10% or whatever kind of margin of discount on everything in the catalog, and that really doesn't make good sense. Instead, what we're seeing now is that people are tuning their special pricing agreements so that they are narrowly focused on just the products that the customer is most sensitive about, and that is one of the best practices for holding your margin. Can we move on to the next slide, please? If we look back historically, recessions have been an accelerator of business models. Thinking back to the horrors that I went through in my first recession in the 80s, that was the launch of the re-engineering, resizing, which has been a trend that after that recession and then followed by a brief recession in the 90s had just exploded to now it's almost impossible to find a company that doesn't talk something about their re-engineered or their resized. We see customers that have far fewer people there. Same things happened with special pricing agreements. When I think of this, the last recession caused an explosion in the use of them. And I'll give you some specifics. We did a poll at the beginning of the recession on special pricing agreements. It was something that was driven by a lot of our customer clients, our distributor clients, who were asking us, is this a trend? What do you see? And when I talked to those people, it was not uncommon for a medium-sized distributor to have 30 to 40 special pricing agreements in place. Looking at that same data in 2011, after the recession, we're seeing where the number had grown from 30 or 40 to 200, and the amazing part is that the number continues to grow. Some of those distributors that reported 200 are now telling us they've got over 400. And here's one of the issues that's happened in this. It is that it's overwhelmed the system, because no one really planned it well. No one really had an idea of how they were going to do it. And so mostly it was, when it was 30 or 40, it was done manually with lots of human intervention and lots of phone calls and lots of things going on. And it has, it's grown to the point where that's no longer sustainable or manageable. If we can move to the next slide, I want to talk about a variation of special pricing. And this is called the ShipEndemic Program. And just to describe the program in its most basic terms, here's the way it works. The distributor buys products at their regular price. They put them into inventory, and for a select group of customers, they sell them at a very, very discounted rate. It's not uncommon for the discounted rate to be below the normal distributor price. Then what happens is the distributor, after they make the sale, report that sale back to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer then issues them a debit or credit for the parts that they've done. And just looking at this slide gives you an idea of the complexity of it and the room for error. And we're going to talk more about some of those rooms for error later. But if you think about this, this often involves the sales department of the manufacturer, the sales department of the distributor, the accounting department of the manufacturer and distributor, as well as the purchasing department. So whenever there's that many people, you tend to get into some issues. If we can move on to the next slide, we're going to talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages that we see. First of all, here's the reason why there's an advantage for the distributor. They don't have to maintain two different inventories. Back before this practice came on, it was not uncommon for a distributor to have a section on their shelf with widgets that were marked that these only go to the Acme company, and then everyone else came through. So from a different inventory level, that created lots and lots of issues, duplication of investment for the distributor, and plenty of problems. For the manufacturer, it means that there's less chance for price erosion. Here's what I mean by that. One of the common complaints, if you will, from manufacturers on into-stock programs where they said, you've got a customer, Mr. Distributor, who is very price sensitive. We're going to just let you make purchases for that at a very reduced price. And the next thing that they found was, whether maliciously or unmaliciously, that new pricing level became the market standard, and they found customers of all different kinds who were enjoying that lower price. It meant lower margin for the distributor and lower margin for the manufacturer. In terms of disadvantages, distributors are not happy with it, or at least were initially unhappy with it, because there was complexity in preparing reports. Nearly every manufacturer had a different report form. There were lots of issues with the distributor getting their money. Sometimes it took 90 days to get your money back, and the ownership of the distributors hated it. And it also created instances where there was inflation of inventory levels, because the inventory showed as being worth 100 each, but in reality they were never sold for that price. And it also created these operational errors, and operational errors were all tied back to that point that we talked about before, where this was by and large a manual situation. It was done with plenty of human involvement, and that plenty of human involvement often created issues. It also caused things where the distributors didn't get their money fast enough, where there were squabbles months after the transaction took place over how much money the distributor got or how much money the manufacturer had to pay. If we could move on, please. if I look at the drivers behind the failure of these programs, not just with special pricing agreements, but with distributor programs in general, they basically break into three different areas: the complexity of the program, the way that the incentives are handled, and then technical limitations. And I want to take just a moment to explore those, if we can move to the next slide. First of all, the program complexity. In the early days of SPAs, as well as other types of programs, they often involved management time. And I can tell you that I personally have come into contact with really aggressive and good distributors who said, we're not going to take advantage of this program. We're not going to take advantage of this SPA because I just don't have time to handle it, and the dollars aren't large enough. I'd rather lose the sale than move forward. There's also an issue, and the issue that comes up is, if I don't totally understand how a program's going to work, then I'm not going to give it the same level of attention as a distributor owner or as a distributor manager. And oftentimes, I don't even know if things are working or not working until a year later, which kind of brings us to tracking. If the distributor doesn't have some visibility, if we think about the SPAs, if the distributor doesn't have an ability to look and go, how many SPAs do I have in place? How many of them are actively being used? Is this making me money? If they don't have that, they're not going to take advantage. And furthermore, if we're talking about just like a growth incentive type program, I've seen many of these programs that in reality, because they were not transparent, because it was not easy for the distributor to understand what they were going to get from the manufacturer, here's what we saw. We saw programs that were largely ignored until November 1st. And November 1st, the distributors looked at it and said, wow, look at this program. I'm going to make a lot of money. And they continued to do exactly what they were doing, which was, just their normal business. Or else they looked at it and said, wow, if I can make a few extra efforts during November and December, I'm going to make money. And I said there were two, but I lied, there are three. The third one was, I looked at it and said, holy moly, I'm not going to make any money, forget that program. And so the program was basically a wash. And finally, the technological limitations. There's way too much spreadsheet, there's way too much handling of information, and oftentimes it's filtered through the manufacturer's field sales force, which means it's delayed in getting to the distributor. We find times when the information is sent to the wrong person at the distributor, and finally long payout cycles. There's nothing which is more demotivating and a waste of money than we get the payback from the manufacturer, whether it be an SPA type program or growth program. We get the money so long after the program's over that we almost forgot why. So if we can move to the next slide, we're going to take a look at some of the cycles and complexity. Again, just like the ship and debit program, there's lots of moving parts. Lots of things happening at the same time. And for manufacturers listening right now, this should be no surprise to you, but some people forget it. You are not the only company that's offering the distributor program. And so what happens is that the distributors oftentimes will gravitate to the ones that they find are well laid out, and even to the point which doesn't make sense in business, but it's true because people have limited amounts of time. people will sacrifice money for simplicity and for knowing for sure what they're going to get. A great example, I don't know if you're like me, you get hundreds of requests to do surveys, and the survey comes and says you have a chance to win a $1,000 gift card, and I almost never do those surveys, as opposed to the ones that say if you do the survey you get $10 for sure. And that's kind of the mentality of the distributors. Let's take a look at some of the mistakes and some of the things that we could possibly do to improve things. If we move to the next slide. Here are the lucky 7 or the unlucky 7, depending on if you follow them or not, that will drive participation and really streamline SPAs and other programs. And I'm going to talk specifically for a moment about SPAs. Start and stop dates. It's amazing how many of these come with no start date and no stop date for certain. And here's the issue that comes. I mean, it's not that it's not important to the distributor, but these are being passed along to the customer. And so if there's no stop date passed to the customer, if we say this is an agreement and it's in place from January 1st to December 31st, then everyone knows a purchase is made on December 28th. Okay, that counts. If it's made on January 2nd, it doesn't count. Being able to understand that creates or takes away lots of confusion and takes away lots of turmoil later on. And as a best practice, one of the things that I really do recommend that manufacturers build into their system is something which sends a notification. If you've got a special price agreement and that special price agreement is developed for a Fortune 500 company, oftentimes these companies require 30 days prior approval before the distributor can increase their price. And so I really recommend sending out some kind of like a 2-minute warning, only it's a 60-day warning to the distributor. This agreement expires in 60 days. You need to talk to the customer. You need to renegotiate it, or we need to find out what we're going to do. The other part is partner eligibility. When dealing with special pricing, especially if you're a manufacturer that's got multiple distributors serving the same market, this one's huge, because are you giving the special pricing agreement to a specific partner who brought you the opportunity and who provided you the right kind of commercial or competitive information to warrant putting the special pricing agreement out? Or is it something that you're going to give to every distributor that serves the downtown Tupelo marketplace? Understanding that it is important not only from a logistics standpoint, but it's also important from a standpoint of legality. Qualifying products. Are we going to offer this for every product in our catalog, or are we going to offer this for a special few? I recommend the special few that the customer is very price sensitive on. And because it's not uncommon for the same product to have different tag numbers at the end, does this entail every product that or every different iteration of that product, or just a specific product? Program requirements. Is there something special that the distributor needs to do? And if the distributor needs to maintain inventory level, how are you going to communicate that to the distributor, and how is that identified? And I'll tell you right now what happens is it's done kind of an off-the-hand comments from whoever your regional person that deals with the distributor might be to the distributor, and oftentimes to the salesperson. No one takes notes. No one knows anything until there's a big problem and things blow up. Finally, the last two is program stacking. A number of manufacturers offer growth rebate or growth incentives, and it's like, okay, if you grow your business 20%, you get an extra 3% back to the distributor. Here's the thing to think about, and it's a costly error if it's not thought through, and that is, does special pricing where the manufacturer is taking a lower margin, does that count as part of the special pricing agreement? And does it count towards that growth rebate, which depending on who you talk to, a distributor or manufacturer, it could fall either way. But it's something that needs to have visibility. And finally, what are you going to look for when a claim has been submitted? Are you asking for invoices? Are you asking that the distributor tells you what price they sold it at, which is a good benchmark in my opinion and the best practice? How long can the distributors hold on to these before submitting? Because what happens if the distributor misses a couple of products and submits it to you 2 years later? Are you still going to honor that, and what does that do to your financials? If we can move to the next slide. We've already said that that one of the reasons why many of you are here today is because this is something that's gained legs and it's caught us off guard. It's a brand new business practice or relatively new business practice, and our systems are overloaded. We've done things manually, and now all of a sudden we've got issues. How do we solve those? In my mind, there's a couple of things to think about. The need for timely rebates has put some pressure. We have to do these quicker. We need to handle things so that they're taken place and resolved up front, where we lay some rules in place. And standardization. Standardization makes these easier for the distributor to manage because they know what your standard terms and conditions are, and they also make it easier for you to manage. And finally, the visibility. We need to have a plan so that not only can you manage these, but a distributor can take a look at all of their programs, including special pricing agreements, to understand where do they sit, where are they, how quickly will they get their money, and finally, and this is something I think is terribly important to the manufacturers. How can we use this to do something so that we can monitor whether this program is a success? Because otherwise you're just entering it on blind faith. You have no idea as to whether or not it works, or no idea as to whether or not it has an impact on the market. And so it becomes a financial tool that you can use to actually understand and work your business. If we can move on to the next slide. Here's another thing that I like about managing programs like this through some form of automation, and this is a message I pass on to distributors as well as manufacturers, and that is, if you are going to automate something, generally speaking, you sit back and think about the process. In this particular case, we're going to sit back and think about, what is our plan going to be? What do we need? How are these things going to work? And that is so much different and so much better than the way it used to be, where these were handled almost on a de facto problem du jour kind of situation, and we had just major blow-ups. And because money was involved, the blow-ups quickly escalated from being minor to being major. once we automate, execution becomes far easier because we can figure out who's involved in the program, what we're selling. We can do things, for instance, like collect point of sale data on special pricing to understand what's the distributor selling it at, and what how often are products being sold. We can add some validation to make sure that the program is being followed properly and being used well, and plus we can also use it to do the funding. But even more importantly, I think at the end it gives us an opportunity to, at the end of the year, sit back and say, was this worth the effort? Was this distributor a good partner for us to use on this program? Was this program a success? Did it drive the types of behavior that we wanted to? And I think with every good process, that and the definition of a process really means that there's A, documentation, B, there's measurement points and a procedure that we go through, and finally an evaluation where we can look at the process and say, have we improved? And that's really something that you can't do if you do it differently every time. You can't do if the record keeping and the data isn't there. And so having this ability to manage and look at the spend is super important. If we can move on to what will be, and everyone will be happy to know, my final slide. Here's some takeaways. Ship and debit and special pricing, it's not going to go away. It's being used as a competitive weapon. If you're not using it, people are using it against you. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The accuracy is ultra important because we're talking about money, and people get all emotional about money. There's the situation with distributors are slow to change. Old habits die hard. Limited access to information is the old model, and quite frankly, it's a model that always leads to problems. Setting some objective parameters, structuring a program, building a program without taking time to formalize and firm up on the details of how it works and what the restrictions are and the things we talked about, like program stacking, those can lead to financial difficulty. And finally, in terms of managing programs, people costs are going up. You don't have time to take really qualified people and take them away from important tasks to do things that could be done very inexpensively in an automated situation. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it back over to Alex, and I look forward to your questions later on.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it. Now we're going to quickly transition here, folks. I'm going to hand it over to Sam, who heads our Automated Solutions Sales team. He's going to discuss some of our solutions. Sam?
Thanks, Alex, and thank you, Frank, for a lot of excellent insights. Just quickly, won't keep you too long, just wanted to make everyone aware that we support a variety, not just ship and debit, but a variety of marketing, price incentive, price exception operations, program operations, with SaaS-based modules that completely automate these processes. In addition to that, specifically when it comes to handling channel partner reimbursement claims or discounted invoices that are submitted back as a result of these various programs that are rolled out to them, we have an automated solution that eliminates spreadsheet usage in the three main areas, which is gathering sales data, importing the claims or discounted invoices, and the associated programs in order to determine whether or not a claim is valid for either payout or debit memo. So, and in addition, we have an interface to this module that helps program managers enforce or make sure that each program that's rolled out has those 7 core elements in it that Frank described in an earlier slide. So that's a quick hit on the type of capability that we can provide where there's interest in moving to a more automated environment. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Sam. So now we're at the end of today's presentation, and as promised, we're going to take a few of your questions. Our first question: how do I approach special pricing agreements as more of a shared task with my distributor rather than a negotiation between adversaries? Adversaries, excuse me. Excuse me.
Hey, why don't I take that one? This is Frank speaking here. You know, the best way of handling this, and I think what is usually the most common, is that the distributor brings some market information back to the manufacturer. And the market information is, we've identified a company that uses 10,000 widgets a year. The normal price from you for those widgets is $10 each, but it appears as though these guys are buying them for $9. Is there a way that we can work together to come up with a price? That and so if you take that approach, or if you take an approach where you say to the distributor, we had to negotiate with, I'll just pick the biggest company I can think of off the top of my head. If we had to negotiate a deal with General Motors for our products, and the product is sold at a very low level. We don't want to do the business direct. We support our distributors, and so here is the business that we've got. And here's the margin that's built in to you. Are you interested in taking it? I'd be lying if I said there was never a situation with negotiations. There sometimes is. Distributors, as a point, are a good cross-section of America. There are people that like to argue. You're going to find those. But if you approach it in that manner, generally speaking, there's not a whole lot of issues that come up where this thing turns adversarial.
All right, thanks, Frank. Got another one here. What if we have multiple distributors serving the same market?
Gosh, that's a real common question and a real common issue. Here's what happens. Generally speaking, I like to see the SPA go to the distributor who brought the information or who is working with the customer. And I like to see one SPA per customer. So okay, Mr. Customer, and we'll go back to General Mills, or General Motors, General somebody. We'll go back to them and say, okay, for General Motors, Acme Distribution has the SPA because they were the ones that discovered the application. They were the ones that called on the customer. They were the ones that brought us the competitive information, and that agreement is tied to one distributor. What oftentimes happens, especially in the world of where purchasing folks are involved, is that the purchasing guy goes, okay, I've got this special price, and I know that there's someone else that sells your products in town, and so I'm going to go to them and get a quote just to see how good the price is. So the distributor uses their normal price margin. The guy goes, well, you're way out of the picture. He calls you, and that second distributor calls the manufacturer and says, I just discovered a situation where somebody across town selling this far cheaper than I can buy it. What's going on? At which point in time you have to say, well, we've got a special pricing agreement. It's tied to that distributor, and this is where it gets tricky because oftentimes the distributor and that purchasing person are having conversations, and the conversation goes something like, whatever they're selling it for you, or to you for, I'll sell it for less. all I need is to get your get the special pricing agreement. And so the customer will then contact you and say, I want you to allow this second distributor to have my special pricing agreement. That's where work sets in for the manufacturer. The manufacturer needs to determine, is this an issue where it's only fishing for better price, or is this an issue where maybe there's a service breakdown at our incumbent distributors? And if the request comes and it turns as though it's only for price, then I would, with very gently tell that second distributor, I'm sorry, if you had a special pricing agreement with us, the rules would be the same. It would go to just one distributor. Now, all that being said, there are times when very special instances where sometimes you have to give the special pricing agreement to multiple customers and or multiple distributors, and that creates just a little bit of an issue, and it creates a little bit of a management issue for the field sales team. I hope I addressed that.
I think you did. We actually have one more question for you. How long should special pricing agreements be enforced?
The ideal in my mind is for 1 year, and the reason for that is it sends a message to the customer who really drove the need for a special pricing agreement that this agreement isn't a bait and switch tactic. We're not just throwing you out a good price this week so that we capture your business, and then next week we're going to raise it. And so that a year is a good term. I know that there are a lot of manufacturers and perhaps people on board listening that work with special projects with customers. Perhaps the customer is doing an expansion or something and needs to buy a lot of product for a short time. In those instances, it's the duration of the project. I just am very, very leery of number one, anything shorter than 6 months and anything longer than a single year, because there's way too much that can happen in that period of time. If it's 6 months, then that means you're constantly renegotiating the special pricing agreement, and oftentimes when you renegotiate, that's the time that the customer will bring in competitors to again check your price. All
right, well, great. Thanks, Frank. Well, everyone, that is it. I want to thank you for attending today's webinar presentation. I want to thank our presenter, Frank Hurtte, as well as our Inside Sales Executive, Sam Burrows. If you'd like to learn more about Frank and River Heights Consulting, he has plenty of great resources, blogs, and ebooks at riverheightsconsulting.com. Feel free to give him a call at 563-514-1104 or send him an email at frank@riverheightsconsulting. If you'd like to get in touch with Computer Market Research, please visit us online or give us a call at 858-795-1021. You can reach Sam at sam@cmr.bz. All right, thanks everyone again, and we'll be sending you an email that has today's presentation recorded, so be sure to look out for that, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.